Hold on just 1 minute. Sorry, guys. It's saying that I cannot share. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and do our initial prayer, right? All right. Let's close our eyes. Let's calm our hearts and think of our Master Jesus, asking him his presence and the presence of his emissaries of love, our guardian angels, the good spirits, into this space with us so that we can enjoy, that we can take the most out of it. May the words of Jesus and his gospel speak to us directly, speak to our hearts, and may we have the courage to better ourselves using all the knowledge that we gather every day in our own actions and transforming our lives so that when people see us, they see more of Christ and less of us. So be it. All right, let me share my screen again. And can you all see my slides? Okay. All right. You got to be patient with me, you know? This thing about the technology. It has been, right? Like a whole year almost, but, we're still, learning how to get it all together. So I'm Anna Oliveira. I'm speaking to you guys from the beautiful city of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm happy that you are here too. So today we're going to talk about the chapter 1 of the Gospel according to Spiritism that is entitled, I Have Not Come to Destroy the Law. So it's a new year, and we're starting over to study about the gospel. So today we'll talk about chapter 1, like I said, but I really encourage you guys to, as you are watching, to also read the chapter and also to read the introduction of the book. That's where Kardec, tells you a little bit about the book itself, the purpose, and it gives some definitions there for us as we are studying the gospel according to Spiritism. So, we'll talk about the topic today, but I really encourage you to to read it too. So, the chapter Kardec starts with this part from the gospel, right, from these verses, that it says, do not think I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I have not come to destroy them, but to fulfill them. For I say to you in truth that heaven and earth shall not pass away before everything in the law is perfectly fulfilled, up to one single iota and one single dot, right? And that is in the Gospel of Matthew, right? So this makes us think, what is actually the message of Jesus, right? what is the true message of the Christ. So that's one thing we can start reflecting. But also, it makes us think: is the message of Jesus, is that the same in accordance of other revelations that were given to us, right? Other divine revelations before the coming of the Christ to earth and then after. So, is there any relationship between all these divine messages that we have been receiving throughout, the times from God? So, those are the things that we are gonna, ponder on today. So, today we'll talk about the three divine revelations to humankind, as we say in Spiritism. Um, all right, so let's start with the first revelation, right? So we talk as the first revelation being Moses. Uh, but we just have to pay attention in this part, in the first revelation, because it has two parts actually. So we have the part that is the law of God, but then we have also Moses also, wrote a civil law too. So we'll go in parts. So the first part, let's talk about the law of God, right, or the Ten Commandments, right, that Moses received, right, in the Mount Sinai, right. So we remember, right, I grew up Catholic, and I used to teach my students too all the Ten Commandments, right? You need to know that before you can have your first communion. So they're all they really, this first commandments, this divine revelation, it really brought us to have this relationship with one God, right? That is one big point. But Kardec tell us that uh, the law of God, the part of the Mosaic law that is the law of God, that is the Ten Commandments, it's a law for all times and all nations, right? Because it's talking about the law of love, right? So it's ethical and moral things that we need to do to be in accordance to God's law. So this will not change over time, right? Or in different nations, right? Do we think that we still should be reminding people, you shall not kill, right? You shall not steal? Yes, unfortunately, we still need to do that, and that would be important for any culture too, right? So that is the part one of the first revelation. Then we have the second revelation, the first revelation. There is also Moses' law, right? So there is this civil law that he had to create. So if we remember, in the time of Moses, the Hebrew people had been in Egypt as the slaves for more than 500 years, right? And then now they are free. They have been enslaved there, and they are going right from Egypt going to Canaan. But you can see how long it took them to reach there, right? So around 40 years in the desert. And during this whole time, Moses was, beside being a prophet, he is also kind of the governor there. He needs to keep the law, to keep the civility. So he has to have some laws to, and at that time it had to be something that people can understand. So it really, it was a law that used fear to restrain people that were not disciplined, right? Um, they were in this other culture in Egypt for so long. So, all this time in the desert really helped them to come back to a set of values again and be prepared as they were leaving, right? And this law, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, to us today sounds really cruel, right? Thank God we have better laws than that. But at that time, it was actually an improvement, right? Because at that time, maybe if you steal something small, maybe a loaf of bread, you would be killed, as a punishment for that, right? In this way, it starts to give this idea that the punishment is it's more uh, in the proportion of what the crime or what the problem was, right? So this really was meant to have some limitations in the way that human beings actually act, right? And this will change with people, with culture, with time, right? Because like our civil law today, in many places, is not an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? We have other laws. So, depending on your geographic um, place, depending on the culture, then we would have the adaptation, the changing of this law. So the part of the first revelation of the Mosaic law, that is the Ten Commandments, does not change, right? Because it comes from God. But this civil law has been changing over time, and Jesus was really not really for this, right? He told us to be forgiven and was completely non-violence. uh, so then we come to the second divine revelation, that is Jesus, right? So we had Moses, he came, he told us, right, about these commandments, kind of a guideline, right, for us to behave, to be better, to be more in line with God's law. And then we didn't get it, right? Then Jesus comes and says, wait a minute, let me explain it all, right? And let me summarize it for you, right? To make it simple so you can get it, right? So Jesus really, like is the title of this chapter, he didn't come to change the law. The law of God is there. He came to make us understand it better, right? And even when asked what is the first of all commandments, right? We're still confused. We have 10, and then Jesus like a very good masters, right? A great teacher. He likes, forget about the 10. If you can't remember all 10, just remember this. I'm going to summarize all 10 in one. That will be love your Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And then he says, and there is the second, which is similar to the first, that love your neighbor as yourself. So we can see that here he's just summarizing all of that into fraternal love, right? That's what Jesus said. And even he said even more. He said that he didn't come to change the law, but he said that, all that loving God and loving your neighbor, it's there where there is all the law is there and all the prophets, right? So we also, if we don't remember all the laws, if we don't remember all the prophecies, if we just remember that love God and love your neighbor like you love yourself, then we're covered, right? Like a great masters, right? Those teachers that we have, that sometimes it's so complicated, but they come and they just say, oh, this, look at this. And then we're like, aha, right? Then we feel like, yes, I get it now. So that is the second divine revelation, right? So it's still talking a little bit more about Jesus' law. Uh, you know, the authority of Jesus really does not come just like a legislator, right? It's not about only his word. It comes from his being, right? Being a perfect being all charity and all love, right? So it's coming from the nature of his spirit. That's where the authority comes, right? That where that magnetism comes that drove so many people, right, to follow him. And that once we read his gospel, we still feel that energy. So he came, right, to teach us what? That true life is not on earth, right, but in the kingdom of heaven. He actually told us how to navigate this path that lead us to this kingdom of heaven, right? How can we reconcile with God? And also, he came to warn us, right, about things and that happen, and how we should behave ourselves, right? Uh, so he really came to expand and to clarify this message, right? Uh, he came to tell us, that this reconciliation with God comes from our inner reformation, from our transformation of our attitudes, right? Not so much about the external part of us, but the interior, taking care of the inside of ourselves, right? How we feel, what we do, what we think. That would be the impact, right? And that's what it's our thoughts, our behaviors that are making us, stray away from God. However, when he came, he couldn't explain everything, he couldn't say everything, right? So, if we see, as the time passes, at the time of Moses, people really have to say, and you see how it is, like, do not, do not, do not, do not, right? So it's really fearful and authoritarian. Then Jesus comes and teaches us really how to see things in a different, um, you know, uh, in a different light, because we are already more prepared for that at that time, right? But then, uh, at that time still, even all these things that Jesus was saying, they were kind of foreign, right? This thing about, forgive your enemies, right? If somebody comes and steals part of your clothing, give the other one, give the other cheek, right? All of those things were very different at that time, right? He was kind of already, those ideas were not mainstream, right? They might not even be still today, but he couldn't tell us everything because we are not prepared, right? So we needed to acquire this sense of maturity, this intelligence, but also this moral maturity, so that we can understand things a little bit better, right? So then comes our uh, third revelation, that we consider the Spiritism as this third divine revelation to humankind, right? So in Spiritism is the science that comes to reveal to man, through irrefutable proofs, the existence and nature of the spiritual world and its relations with the physical world. So now, this spiritual world is not something unnatural anymore, right? Now it it's explained, right? And it's shown to us, and how this interaction, this relationship between us and the spiritual world, the incarnates and discarnates, it happens all the time, and how, what the laws that govern that and everything. And remember that Spiritism has three kind of sides to it, right? It is a religion, it is also a science that deals with, right, the spiritual aspects of life, right? Mediumship, the immortality of the soul, right? And is also a philosophy, right? If we look, we'll have on the slide with the works of Kardec. Kardec also asked the spirits very philosophical questions. Why are we here? Where are we going? Where did I come from? Right? All these very important questions. I was saying to our students on Saturday, when we talk about we're talking about exactly, the Kardec and Spiritism and the third revelation. And I was saying, thank God Kardec is Kardec, because if it was me that had to ask the spirits, I might have asked them, very silly things like what are the lottery numbers, when is the pandemic gonna go away, kind of, things like that. But he asked very important questions for the soul, and that's good, right? Um, Also, Spiritism is not the work only one person, right? So this is the work of the spirits, right? These are the messages. So Kardec just kind of compiled, we say codified, he just organized all these messages from the spirits who we consider that they are the emissaries of God, right? So it's important for us to also remember that Spiritism did not come to destroy Christianity, right? But to develop it too, right? So, we say that Spiritism is the key, right? That's why I have a key right here too. That is the key that enables everything to be easily explained. So through this key of Spiritism, it's so much easier to understand Jesus. That's what, we think. So we are Christians because we follow Jesus Christ and his gospel. We just have a slightly different interpretation for it, right? So um, these are some characteristics of Spiritism, right? The whole purpose, the main thing is that it really unveiled to us this existence of the spiritual world and the connection with the physical world. So things are not supernatural, out of the ordinary miracles anymore, right? There is an explanation for things. And this message came from the spirits, from the emissaries of God, right? If you guys have any comments or any questions or any additions or contributions, feel free to just unmute yourself and comment. Okay. So another thing that is important, and Kardec will talk about this in this chapter too, is the alliance between science and religion, right? So science usually deals with the laws of the material world, while religion talks about the laws of the moral world. But they do complement each other, right? If we think about science, philosophy, and religion, there are three sides of the whole life, right? There are things that science does not go in, then religion fills that blank, and then philosophy comes there too. So they actually complement each other, right? They were together in the beginning, right? And I'm going to show you an example. And I'm sure there are many more, but I'm from the medical sciences, the biological sciences. So I'll bring an example of that, how really science and religion, they were, together. They went, together from the beginning, right? Then throughout the history, we decided that science is there, religion is there, and Kardec really tell us that this exclusivism of one and the other really resulted in this conflict in which people actually end up not believing anymore or being intolerant, right? So they either go to one pole, like I don't believe anything, or they go to the other one, in a more intolerance kind of, a beliefs. So, that's why Spiritism really tries to reason with the faith. Can we reason with faith? Yes, we can. And that's the what Spiritism asks us, is to ask the questions, right? Is to doubt, is to search, is to research, is to reflect, is to think about it, is to make sense out of it, right? Because then our faith is going to be stronger, right? Because now we just not just believe, we know. And it's, I believe because I know, not just because somebody told me. So that is a stronger faith that is actually gonna bring us more tools to survive in a world where we have so many trials and expiations, right? So the example I'm bringing you, it's Gregor Mendel, right? So if you study genetics ever, even in high school, then you probably talk about Mendel or the Mendelian laws, the law of hereditary, and you probably had to play with this little box and you had to go for the, you know, what are the autosomes, the recessive genes, and things like that. And if we see here, this is the monastery that Mendel used to live. And you can see his clothes too. And here's his garden, right? Mendel's garden. So, one of the laws of, genetic that people even today study really came from somebody that was a religious person that lived in a monastery. So, it's one of the evidence that, in the beginning, we started to create more problems when we started to separate, science from religion, and we're doing much better when, we kind of work side by side. So yeah. I will not remember right now how far. I'll have to let you know later. And we'll put in the comments for the people on Facebook, but I can't remember. But it was, it's still, of course, that now there are some things that we know that in genetics that do not obey this law, but we still learn it. And a lot of things still obey this law that he, talk about. The some are more is stronger, right? Some stronger characteristics are passed on by, and you have homozygotes and heterozygotes. But I'll search. That's a good question. So in terms of Kardec's work or Spiritism, so we are talking about here the Gospel according to Spiritism, but there are other books, right? The Spirit's book, the Medium's book, Heaven and Hell, Genesis, and even these works that were written, of course, when he was alive, but they were published after he died. So that's called posthumous work. And without forgetting the Spiritist magazine, right? That there are so many editions that he also published. So, what is actually the effect of spiritism, right? So what is the meaning? So if you accept this doctrine or this set of principles, what does it mean for your life, right? Are you just trying to populate your brain a little bit more, right? You just have so much intelligence out there that you just want to fill in the memory of your hard drive right here with the information. So hopefully not. It's good to know things, but the best things is use things, know things that are, or learn things that are useful, right? That's why my students always ask me, why do I have to learn this? And then I have to justify. If I justify it, then they are more motivated to learn it, right? But they're always saying, when I'm gonna use it, right? So um, sometimes people are not there just for the fun of it, just for learning, right? So just for the process. So really, we need to think about the spiritism too, right? If we choose that as our religion, or as our way of Christianity that we want to follow, what is that going to change in my life, right? How can I take that knowledge and how can I apply, right, to my life, to like Anna living every day? How can I do that, right? So we talk about spiritism as the promiser of the promised consoler, right? That Jesus talked about, right? He said he was going to leave us, but then he was going to send. Was going to ask God, and he would send us the promised consoler. So we consider spiritism like the promised consoler. So remember this word, consoler, right? So it should um, bring us this serenity, right? This more rational faith, right? And this consolation, right? Now we know that, death, it's there, it happens, it's part of life. It's an experience we have to go through ourselves, and we see our loved ones going through that too. But we are not fearing the death anymore, right? We accept it as part of our life. We don't despair because we know that, you know, these people that we loved, they don't cease to exist. They keep on living, right? Some of you who know me close, you know that my dad passed away last month. So it's been just pretty much a month. And a lot of people ask, you know, you seem okay, right? I'm so lucky to have so many people who checked on me. And sometimes they feel like, oh, and it's not that I don't miss my dad. I'm such a daddy's girl. I mean, he's my first love, right? And you know how girls and dads, that is a different thing right there. But I always tell people, I do believe in the immortality of the soul. So I know, and usually I talk about my dad still in the present form. So I say he is, not he was, because I know he keeps on going. Sometimes I try to say was because I don't want to confuse people, right? But that's how I think. So one, that's the one big thing. But other also because we had a very good relationship. So I also encourage you, if you love someone, tell them you love. If you don't, try to see how you can make that work, because, you know, we never know when we're not going to have a chance of doing that in person, just through when we, you know, through a mediumistic medium or something like that. So it's not like that because I'm a spiritist that I do not miss my dad, that I don't cry, that I didn't miss him dearly, right? So I'm sad, but I'm not desperate, if that makes sense, right? And that takes time, right? You really have to believe, and that's the time when it comes to the testimony, actually, of your faith, right? Um, so the other thing too is this resignation in face of life's afflictions, right? So if I know that, you know, this life right here is one piece of the puzzle, but there are some things that came before and there are some things that will come after, I'm not in a hurry anymore. I'm not desperate to get everything right here, or, you know, so I know I have time, and I also know that things have a reason for the afflictions. There's a purpose. So I know it's a test. And if I stay calm and I pass the test, everything's going to be fine. But also, because Spiritism tells me too, that even if it is a test, and a test is always scary, I'm telling you, even I just had to take a test after many years that I was teaching. I was like, oh, ooh, that must be how my students feel, right? So it's good to be in other people's shoes, and tests are scary. But remember that we are not alone, right? Whatever test or trial or affliction that we're going through, we have so many resources because God is good, He's just, but He's merciful, right? So His mercy, it's abundant and, you know, lasts forever, right? And also, because I know that I'm this work in progress, right? There is chapters before, things, choices that I made before, and that impact what I'm living today. And then whatever I do today will impact what I'm going to see, what I'm going to feel, what I'm going to experience next. Then I have this tendency to be more forgiving and more tolerant towards others' imperfections, right? Because I see these imperfections in me. So I can see how those things could happen to me too. So I am more not just forgiven and tolerant, but I think I'm more sensitive to those things, right? I can empathize much better, because if I see somebody doing something that before I would just go first and judge, then I can say, yeah, I still know that that is not right. But who would tell me if I was in that position under those same circumstances, right? That I wouldn't have done the same thing. You never know. You are not having that same experience. But if you search your soul, you know that you are not that forgiving. You know that you still struggle a little bit being patient, that sometimes you have some outbursts, that sometimes you do get angry. So, what if everything was set the same way for that person? The only thing is that we would take that person out of the question and put you back in there. So if it's me instead of them, would I do the same thing? Probably, right? So I can understand why they did and how. It still might be wrong, but I can understand, right? Because I can see in me those imperfections, right? So I can relate to that. Um, and some people, they do ask if, these that spiritism, does it teach a new morality? Is that different from what Christ taught? And actually, this is in the Spirit's book and the conclusion. And the answer is no, right? The morality of spiritism, it's not different from that of Jesus, right? So uh, you know, what they do is that they make intelligible and patent truths that had only been taught in the allegorical form, right? In that form of parables, of a story with specific symbols, right? That will be easier for the people at the time to understand, right? And together with morality, they bring us the definition of the most abstract problems of psychology, right? So Jesus came to show men the way of true good, right? Uh, One of the biggest things, right, also that Spiritism has done is that it has killed materialism, right? It shows us that the true life is the spiritual life. All right, here is a stage. I'm always a spirit, but now I'm incarnated with this body here. But I am a immortal spirit, right? So the materialism becomes a temporal thing, not the most important thing. So it really kills it. And that's where it brings the consolation, the hope, it strengthens the faith, it give us courage to go through the trials, right? And here, um, it talks also that it shows that you have the results of evil, but also the necessity of good, right? So we also learn that is not, it's great that we don't do evil, but we should not stop there. Now we need to start doing some good, right? And here it says the number of those whom it, right, Spiritism has brought back the better sentiments with evil tendencies it has neutralized and whom it has turned from wrongdoing is already larger than is usually supposed and is becoming still more considerable every day because the future is no longer for them a vague imaging, a mere hope, but a fact, the reality of which is felt and understood when they see and hear those who have left us, right, the spirits, lamenting or rejoicing over what they did when they were upon the earth. Whoever witnesses these communications begin to reflect on the reality thus brought home to him and to feel the need of self-examination, self-judgment, and self-amendment, right? So that is one very important aspect too, is that materialism really makes us think small, short, right? When we think about spirituality and being a spirit, a immortal spirit, now I'm transcendent. Now I'm bigger, right? That cannot, this body cannot even hold me, right? Now I'm awesome. Huh? Really? And now I don't need to fear so many things, right? So many needs or wants that I have because I'm a spirit, right? So that's what, it should bring us to reflection, right? It's like this knowledge, this divine revelation that we then, each and every one of us, in different ways, we can take to our lives. And wherever we are, we can take that and move forward, right? With that knowledge, with the courage to work on that knowledge, right? So if we see here, the summary, right, of everything. When we talk about the divine revelations to humankind, then remember that God never forsake us, right? He's always, is this Father, right? Is the Creator, this caring. So remember, just, yes, but good and merciful, right? Always giving us opportunities to improve ourselves, to learn more, to take the next step, right? So we have the first revelation with Moses with the 10 Commandments. So we have these rules, right, from the beginning. Then Jesus come talking about the law of love, about charity, about forgiveness, right? So it's almost like, you know, going deeper, right? It's talking about us to act, to be proactive, to transform ourselves, to practice, right? Those rules, not just to know them, not just to recite them, but to live them, right? And then it comes the third revelation through Kardec and the spirits, right? So we have this message from the spirits, the spiritist codification, that comes to clarify what did Jesus really meant, with his message, right? So again, they are different revelations, but they are all connected, right? So I hope you can see that how Moses came, but Jesus, when he came, he didn't say that he was gonna change the law, but he came to fulfill the law, right? And then when the spirits came, they didn't say forget about Jesus. No, they said, right? And there's a question in the spirits book that asks, what is, the most perfect model for us? And I'm very badly paraphrasing the question, but the answer is the shortest one and just says Jesus, right? So Jesus is our guide and model. So spiritism doesn't come to change, the message of the Christ. Now remember, that little key is just a key, a set of principles of knowledge that actually can make us understand Jesus, what he said, much better. Okay. Um, And these three, I think I'm going to conclude towards this. You guys have been very quiet today. Maybe really reflective, or maybe, or maybe, do we go until 7:30 or 7:15? Okay. Okay. You're my friend, so discount like 99%. 99%. Right? So these questions here are from this book, The Consoler, by the Spiritual Manual, and the medium is Chica Xavier. And here are some of the questions. So one asks, have the Ten Commandments received by Moses? That's basis of all justice until today. Has that changed by religious sects? And it says that sometimes, right, we people, right? So he's saying here, like the priest changed the sacred text. But however, despite the transitory changes that Ten Commandments transmitted to earth through Moses, always reappear in the primitive period as the basis of all the law in the world, right? Support for all codes of earthly justice. And that's where we have to be careful, right? And that's where we can see that it's the Ten Commandments. It's something that is really old. It's a message that is really old, but it's actually accepted by many. So here, uh, how did it happen, right? So the Old Testament words were spoken from God to Moses at the Sinai Mount. And here it was actually a mediumistic, right, event, right? So Moses, as a medium there, received, right, um, this message, right? Um, so here, Emmanuel tells us that it was dictated to Moses by the emissaries of Jesus, right? So we can even see, and maybe that's a very good point too, that all these, even though we're talking about three different revelations, Jesus is in the command, he's in the organization, he's still behind all of these other ones, right? So it was still under the guidance of Jesus that Moses received those, and then he came himself, and it's still under the guidance of Jesus and the high spirits that we receive the the message of Spiritism too. Okay, so it's talking about if Moses was an emissary, right? So um, he had really this task, right, of this Hebrew missionary, right? He was an emissary of the higher plan, right? So really, he had, this mission, right? And it talks about here, did Moses transmit the definite law to the world, right? So he's talking, the Emmanuel says to us that the prophet of Israel gave the earth the basis of the divine and immutable law, but not the whole law, integral and definitely, right? So we have to recognize that men always receive divine revelations according with their evolutionary position, right? So now he's saying, until now, humanity of the Christian era has received the great revelations in three essential aspects. So the first one, Moses brought the mission of justice. Jesus, the gospel, the unsurpassable revelation of love, right? Spiritism, in its characteristic of Christianity, which in turn brings the sublime task of truth, right? Unveiling the all these laws, explaining, right, taking this veil of unnatural or supernatural things, the things that are of the spirit, right? And then he says at the center of the three revelations is Jesus Christ as the foundation of all light and wisdom. So again, even though we have those three revelations at three different time points, Jesus is still, right, over the whole thing. He's still organizing this whole process of sending us messages so that we can understand, that can nudge us on the right path when we stray, right? That keep us thinking and keep us not so inside of ourselves as material beings, but brings us reminders of our true nature, that is of immortal spirit, right? Um, and then he also asks, there's a question too about the meaning of the law of Talion, that law that is an eye for an eye, right? Given the need of redemption in successful reincarnations, right? So it says that this law prevails for all spirits who have not yet built this sanctuary of love in their hearts, right? So if we do not accept or apply the gospel to ourselves, then we will be stuck in that stage of justice, right? Um, because, and then what is going to happen? It says that we will remain imprisoned in vicious circles and painful atoning and purifying reincarnations, right? So if it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, I think today, looking for some pictures, I for presentations, I came up with this quote that said, "An eye for an eye makes everybody blind." Right? It really is not bringing anybody any benefit from that. So an eye for an eye, when does that stop? Right? And then if you have to, do something today and this has consequences for tomorrow, then we're just gonna keep on this cycle. But that's not what the gospel told us, right? It told us to forgive, right? It told us to turn the other cheek and things like that, right? So, um, Jesus really uh, talked about love, right? So it says here, hence the truth that human creatures will redeem themselves through love and will rise to God for it, nullifying with good all the forces that can imprison their hearts in the sufferings of the world, right? So somebody has to be the bigger person, right? To not be just, paying back evil with evil, right? But evil with love. That's what Jesus told us, right? To not repay evil with evil, but evil with love. Because the only energy, right? Or the only thing that can really uh, break evil or annihilate or cancel out evil is good, right? Evil plus evil is the two same forces. They just actually amplify themselves. If you really want to cancel evil out, you have to come with the opposite sentiment, and that is actually love, right? So now I think I'm really gonna start concluding here. So another thing that we can imagine that we're probably saying, oh yeah, I can hear Jesus so much better, right? Those people, they didn't hear Moses, but we might be the same people, the same spirits, directly or indirectly, that heard the Ten Commandments and then never understood them. Maybe that we were around during the time of the Christ. He spoke to us and we didn't answer, right? And now we are here and we have the contact with Spiritism. And now is the time, right? Now it took us many revelations actually to understand this message of the Christ, right? So we are invited to awaken to the need for this inner reformation, this change, right? And to change, I need to know where I am with a lot of self-love, right? But I need to know where I am so to know where I want to be. This will lead us to understand the need for good and love so that we can evolve, we can become better, and we can be able to stay on earth that is changing, right? But also to stay in a better place, right? With uh, others are like us. So if we can do this transformation, then we can be with other like-minded spirits that actually already are staying in tune with love and charity, right? And we need to understand and that this and there is another chapter on the gospel according to Spiritism just about trials and things like that, but understanding too that those difficulties that we go through, those are here for our regeneration, right? It's for our transformation, for our redemption, right? If whenever we do something bad, we want the chance to actually repair that, right? To put things back into harmony. And that's what these trials and expiations actually do for us, right? So I hope too that with this, this when you hear about all these divine revelations, when you hear about God being so nice that he gave us Christ, he gave us Jesus, what an amazing gift is to have Christ as our guiding model, as the governor of our earth, right? Our brother who walks side by side with us just for love. He doesn't need to go this path anymore. He already did all this walk, but he's come back to help us and guide us just because he loves us, right? And because he represents this love, right, from God. So I hope that you can feel special tonight, right? That you can feel loved. And even though we are all brothers and sisters and God has created so many of us, but that you still feel unique and special. Because it doesn't matter what you have done, he still loves you, right? And he will give you as many opportunities as you want, as you need. He's not in a hurry. He's just abundantly sending love and mercy and new opportunities our way all the time, right? So I hope you can feel special, that you feel that your life is a precious gift, that you value to honor life in all its forms, right? From the vegetables all the way to the angels, and that you feel encouraged and consoled, right? But that you feel encouraged to keep living and keep fighting the good fight, right? That you feel really that the life is not a burden, but it's an opportunity, is a gift. And it doesn't matter what happens. God's got you, right? He does not forsake anybody. So thank you guys. Do you guys have any questions or any comments or anything before we do our passes? You are welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always great to be here.
Thank you, Anna. I've learned a lot today, so I'm feeling better.
Great, great. Yes, yes. Remember, I always like to say that because once I say it, the closest ears to my mouth are my own. So I always say the gospel is good news. There's no way to read good news and be sad. So Anna, please, try to cheer up a little bit, right? So we have to remember it's called gospel, meaning good news for a reason, for us to remember good news, good news. So it's supposed to empower us and to console us and to strengthen us, right? To help us move us forward.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. So should we go and do our passes? Okay. Okay. All right. Sorry. Shut your computers down.
Let's prepare ourselves now for the moment of the passes and the blessing of our water. Place by your side a container with clean water to be blessed and magnetized. Dear brothers and sisters, no matter where you are in this moment, what difficulties you're facing, Jesus is always ready to come to our help. Place yourself now in a comfortable position, one that facilitates concentration and receptivity. Breathe slowly and calmly. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Fill your lungs with air and release slowly. Let the energy of tranquility and peace penetrate your lungs and circulate throughout your body. Your soul, in harmony with your body, feels peaceful and at peace. Let us think now about the passage of Jesus among us. In a beautiful and clear day, the golden rays of the sun illuminating the joyful landscape. Multicolored flowers, bouncing, chirping birds fill the landscape with optimism. The news of the cures brought a crowd of needy people around Jesus. Suddenly, Jesus appears, calm and serene. His white tunic is light and long all the way up to his feet. At the sunset, all those who were sick and affected by different diseases were brought to him. And Jesus, laying his hand on each one, healed them, as narrated in the Gospel of Luke. Let's mentalize now Jesus approaching us in this moment, placing his friendly hands on top of your head. Feel the presence of this Divine Master right with you, feeling like a waterfall of pure and crystalline waters start to fall from his hands, coming from his love to bathe you, falling on your head, streaming down your shoulders, bathing your whole entire being, bringing you peace, serenity, and balance, cleaning all impurities and pacifying yourself. Feel these waters bathing you, cleansing and purifying. Breathe. Now think of Jesus as a sun right before you, his light, his warmth, embracing you, enveloping you. Feel the healing emerging, emanating from Christ towards you. He hears your prayers. Trust him. His love is infinite. He is always by your side, protecting, offering everything you need. Trust him. Feel and absorb all these magnificent healing energies coming from Jesus in this moment. His light surrounds and embraces you. Feel these energies running throughout your body. Feel yourself re-energized, strengthened, and at peace. Dear Lord Jesus, our divine friend, extend your generous hands, Lord, and transform these waters into remedies for our physical and spiritual ailments. Hold us, Jesus, in your peace. Extend your vibrations of love for the benefit of my home, dear Lord. May peace, health, tranquility reign here with my family. We give thanks to you, Jesus, and pray that you stay with us today and always. Thank you, God.
All right. So now in this sweet vibration, let's all do our final prayer. Lord Jesus, thank you so much for your love. May these sweet vibrations that we feel right now, this nourishment of our soul, the comfort of our minds. May these sensations stay with us throughout the whole week. Jesus, with the hearts full of gratitude for your love, for your grace, for your peace, we would like at this moment to extend all that is already pure and good in us as a gift to all our brothers and sisters who suffer. May all who suffer, Jesus, maybe the ailments of the illnesses of the mind, of the emotions, of the body, or of the soul, may they all be assisted, not because we are perfect and we deserve, but just because God is merciful and he never forsake any one of us. May Jesus, may you, Master, help us to feel and behave like immortal spirits, to feel in the happy moments, but also in the darkest moments, to feel God's presence, his abundant love, his loving mercy, regenerating us, making us whole, making us one with him and with all the creatures of creation. Jesus, stay with us, bless our families, and may we be together in your name in many, many times, very soon. So be it.
Thank you, Anna.
Ama la vida, es tu oportunidad de ser feliz y de progresar. A cada prueba, a cada dolor, Dios te enseña el valor, nunca se deja de luchar. Ama la vida y da pasos firmes